Hey everyone, hope you guys are all doing well. I know it's been a while since I've last made a video. I think with each video that I make, I keep reiterating that I'm going to start making videos more regularly. That clearly is not happening. So I think we're all kind of on the same page now that this is just going to be a very irregular process in terms of how frequently I'm going to be uploading. But anyway, since the last time I spoke with you guys, some time has passed by. I've done a couple of things. I've been interviewing some students for admission into our medical school. I've had a lot of you guys reach out to me, both in the form of DMs and emails. I've even had the opportunity to talk with a couple of you guys. And through all those conversations, a couple of themes kind of kept coming up over and over again. So I thought it would just be kind of cool to make this video perhaps and just share my thoughts on some of the questions you guys had, just to make it available for all of you guys, some of you who may have the same questions or not. Um, and then in addition to that, just I guess share a little update for you guys about what I've been up to per se. So yeah, I guess without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was one question that I seem to be getting is should you have a plan B when you apply to medical school? This was a very interesting question because actually this thought never crossed my mind when I was applying to medical school, but sometimes I like to peruse the pre-med Reddit page, and I see that this question does pop up. I think in the last few weeks, I've seen a couple of posts on the medical school Reddit about people interested in making a career jump from medicine into like I don't know, investing or CS and stuff like that. So coming back to the question, should you have a plan B when you apply to medical school? The answer to this question is very, very varied, and it's not me trying to evade the question, but it really does depend on each person's individual circumstances. And I think the first thing you got to keep in mind is it really depends on what your goals are. So I think one of the reasons why this thought never crossed my mind is because my goal was I had explored a lot of different options, and through my experiences, I'm not saying I had a very vast array of experiences, and you know that perhaps my level of evidence may not be sufficient to come to the same conclusion for someone else, but for me. In my life, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to be a physician and I wanted to help people in this manner. So that was my goal. That was my ultimate goal per se. Well, ultimate goal as in like in the near future. So that kind of drove my decision-making process in the context of I knew I wanted to go to medical school, and as I may have iterated in previous videos, when you want to do something, it doesn't matter if you're told no the first time, second time, or whatever, you keep trying until you get what you want to get. And so my train of thought was very simple. And whenever I was asked this question on a couple of interviews, what do you do if you don't get in this application cycle? The answer was very simple. I would just continue to do what I love, which is continuing to work in a clinical setting, working with patients, helping people, and apply again. And that was a very simple answer for me when I think back to how I kind of responded to that. But I know that that's not the same approach, or that, first of all, not everyone's goals are the exact same thing, and everyone else has different priorities in life, and that is absolutely fine. I think that's the first thing. So that's why, coming back to what I'm saying, you need to know what your goals are, right? That's I just shared with you guys what my goals were, but your goals may be very different. Your goals, based on your personal life and your personal circumstances, might be perhaps to have a stable income, have a stable career that'll allow you to provide for your family. Of course, medicine is an excellent career choice for that, right? There's no doubt about that. But there's other options for that as well. And those might be the people or other people who might be thinking other things. But that's an example of perhaps someone who might be thinking, hey, what do I do if I don't get in maybe the first time or maybe after three times or something like that? And so bringing up the question, should you have a plan B? And so in that context, for someone whose goals are not just simply to be a physician and to help people per se, or where their goals are different and their goals can be achieved through avenues other than being a physician or going to medical school, then it totally makes sense to have the quote unquote plan B of, okay, this is what I'm going to do if this doesn't work out, and then I'll pursue this track, and then this will still allow me to reach my goals of, providing for my family or, living this kind of life that I wanted for myself. So long story short, each person's life circumstances are different. And it doesn't mean you're selfish. I think it's important to say this. Sometimes people think, I know there's a group of people who think about the concept of, oh, I should have a plan B. And then there's a group of people who are like, I don't want to have a plan, or I think it's wrong to think about a plan B when, I want to go to medical school. And it's really important to come to the understanding that, having a plan B is not being selfish, it's being practical. As I said, each person's life circumstances and situations are different. And if you're you have to keep those into consideration as you're trying to make a decision about, what you want to do. So long story short, is it wrong to have a plan B? Absolutely not. Each person's life and circumstances are completely different, and it's very valid to have a plan B. What that plan B should be, once again, it really does depend upon your goals, but just having one is not wrong. And it's totally fine if you don't want to have a plan B. If your train of thought and your goals align with perhaps how I was thinking, and you didn't want to have a plan B, that's totally fine as well. But it really does depend on what your ultimate goals are. And, that's why it's very important to kind of have that clearly laid out before you start trying to answer questions like these. But I hope that didn't come across as evading the question, but that's kind of at least how I feel and how I approached answering this question to people who reached out. So in addition to that, another thing I wanted to talk about is, since the last time I chatted with you guys, I've been a part of my medical school's admissions process. So I've been interviewing a couple of students, and I think I wanted to share with you guys what I found very insightful through those interviews. What I kind of found to stand out as being, I've shared with you guys my experiences as an interviewee, and now I wanted to share with you guys my experiences being someone who is interviewing other students and how I felt certain characteristics perhaps help them highlight themselves and shine, per se. So I think the one large key takeaway, there's not really much I wanted to share here. The large key takeaway that I found that kind of really made me want to it made me really want to push the admissions committee for accepting a student, and really allowed me to see the person I was interviewing as a future colleague was, a lot of the students I interviewed were at the end of the interview day. And seeing students who, after going through the entire day, because it's exhausting, guys. I went through I remember sitting through these interviews, and I know how exhausting it is. But going through that entire day and still being able to talk about your experiences and why you want to come to medical school enthusiastically, having a smile on your face that conveys that you're really interested in being there. And then also making sure during the interview that you iterate your interest in that particular school. I think these factors kind of really stood out to me. These are the things that I really took away. Because, you're talking to someone for 30 minutes, an hour. What are you going to keep in mind after you're done? Like, I'm going to be honest, I took notes during the interviews so that I could, fill out whatever I needed to fill out for the school after interviewing the applicants. But the things that are really going to stand out are, how do they make you feel? And the things I just now mentioned, even after a long interview day, showing that enthusiasm, having a smile on their face, and reiterating their interest in the school, these factors allowed me to have a really positive impression of those students, and as a result, highly speak highly about them to my school. So take it as you will. These things that I said might be very commonsensical to you guys, and so if that's the case, then there might not be anything new here that you guys gleaned. But that's at least how I felt after interviewing a couple of students. And if you can bring those into your interviews, I think no matter what schools you're interviewing at, I'm sure that they will go a long way in making sure the interviewer is left having a very positive feeling, and feels that the interview was a very positive experience. So all right, that's kind of it in terms of answering questions and kind of giving advice. Well, there's one last thing I'll talk about at the end, but the next thing I want to talk about is kind of another question I kind of got. This was more like a personal kind of thing, is how do I feel about kind of where I am at right now? You guys have kind of been seeing, although not as consistently as the other med school YouTubers. I don't do vlogs, I don't do that stuff. But you guys have kind of seen me throughout the process of since before I started med school to now. So I guess in terms of where I'm at, we're almost done with our second year. Preclinicals are almost done. And after after like 2 or 3 months, we're going to take our first board exam and then move on to our clinical rotations. At this point, a lot of my peers and I have kind of a sort of an idea of what we want to do. Everyone's kind of, it takes a while to kind of get settled into medical school, I think. But at this point, a lot of students, including myself, kind of have an idea of what we want to do, how we want to approach things, perhaps what specialties we're interested in, and stuff like that. Of course, there's still a lot of questions, and there's still a lot of variability. A lot of things can change, but as of now, people are kind of starting to kind of find their niche, if you will. Um, in addition to this, some takeaways, I guess, at this point in time, there's going to be a lot of long days in medical school. That's kind of how it is. A lot of long days in med school. It doesn't get. I don't want to sound pessimistic, but it doesn't get easier. It kind of gets harder as the years pass by. That's just the nature of, I think, how this process works. First year, you start off. Second year, you're wrapping everything up, and you're taking a board exam, and you're taking your first board exam. You're jumping into clinical rotations. Third year is filled with all these clinical rotations, with a very vast variety of experiences that you will have across different ones, which will really be requiring you to kind of pull different parts of yourself to the forefront for each different rotation. Like, medicine is going to require certain skills, surgery will require other skills. And so, of course, that's also the time in which people really will start to piece together and figure out what kind of physician, doctor they want to be, what kind of clinician they want to end up being, and stuff like that. So, not to sound pessimistic, but yeah, things get more challenging year by year. Then you move on to resident. Fourth year, of course, is a little bit more relaxed, but you still have the stress of applying for residency and then matching, and then residency is obviously long hours. You're finally doing what you want, the specialty you want, but long hours, stuff like that. So yeah, I guess that was another interesting insight. And then with all this said, though, with anything in life, as time passes by, I don't want to say you get used to it, but you kind of sort of change to adapt, if that makes sense. Like, undergrad was a different life. If you ask me, undergrad was filled with a lot of fun experiences, meeting a lot of cool new people, having some cool relationships, stuff like that. That was undergrad, and that's a great experience to grow in a different aspect of your life. Med school, a lot less free time, obviously. I don't think that even needs to be said, but it sort of changes you in the process because when you're working so many hours, and I'm sure this is the case for any graduate school, any higher education, or even in the workforce. So I totally get that, but as you start kind of working very long hours, it starts adding up. You start kind of treading on the line of burnout and stuff like that. So it becomes very important. The necessities kind of become very important, like, oh, am I getting enough sleep? Oh, am I eating enough? And stuff like that, which I found kind of interesting. It kind of brings those fundamental things you never thought about, perhaps when you were an undergrad and stuff like that. Those things kind of become important now. Then you kind of got to keep those things in mind. And yeah, so you change, I would like to think for the better, but there's some stereotypes that people change for. People become more callous, people become cold-hearted or whatever. And so, I'm not going to really make any comment of how I think I've changed. I hope I didn't become any of those things, but you do change in the process. So yeah, that's, I guess, in terms of me. And the only reason why I wanted to share this is because I was some people I've talked to have asked me, and so I thought it would be nice to just give you guys an update. But all right, last thing I want to conclude on is advice for anyone watching this video right now. I think one big thing that has kind of stood out to me, I know I shared like a huge section of like thoughts, feelings, advice, and how I was feeling and all that good stuff in the last video. That was like middle of summer last year. Since then, a lot of things have changed, um, academically and personally. But I think the first thing that kind of really stands out to me is you need to know when to take a break, both literally and practically. Literally, in the context of when you're sitting, in a day, you're doing work and whatever, you need to know that it's okay to sit down for a break after you've done like hours of grinding for the MCAT or whatever. right? You need to know that it's okay to take a break. You shouldn't have to feel guilty about that. And then in a practical sense, right? Like you guys are all probably doing all these, if you're watching this channel, you're probably most likely, pre-med students. Um, you guys are doing 100 different things at the same time. You guys need to know, I think everyone needs to know that it's okay to take a break from one or two of these things from time to time if you need it. Um, I understand medical school is competitive to get into, and it's also competitive when you're in, when you figure out what specialty you want to do. It's like that. But at the end of the day, if you're not able to perform at your best, you won't be able to achieve. I mean, you might be able to achieve, but it's going to make it a whole lot harder to achieve what you want to achieve. So that means you got to make sure you're at your best. And if you want to make sure you're at your best, you need to be cognizant of things like burnout and cognizant of taking care of yourself. And sometimes that means saying no to certain opportunities. Sometimes that means taking a break from certain things you guys are a part of. And that's totally fine to do so because you can't perform unless you're taking care of yourself. And so it's really important to kind of keep that logic in the back of your mind. Everyone can do 100 different things. Well, not everyone, but for example, all of you guys who are watching my channel, you guys are very capable. You guys are capable of doing 100 different things. But if all of you do 100 different things, you're all going to burn out. And by the time it comes to like applying to medical school, going on interviews, and all this stuff, if that burnout shows during that part of the process, it's like, what was it all for, right? So it's very important to keep this in the back of your mind. It's okay to take a break and say no. No one's going to judge you for it. But most importantly, I think it's important for you to not judge yourself. This is something that I think I kind of struggled with, saying yes to a lot of things, even if it meant that I couldn't necessarily take it all on my plate at the time, and then I would regret it later on. But I think I'm slowly starting to realize that it's important to be able to understand when you need to take a break and when you have to say no. Um, you have to be comfortable enough to say that without worrying about whether you hurt anyone's feelings and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, and this actually reminded me of a quote, which was I think it was Kobe Bryant who said, "Take a break at the end, not the middle." Um, so in addition to knowing that it's okay to take a break, you got to know when to take the break, right? This quote does not mean you grind until you burn out. It means being strategic about where you're applying these high levels of effort and where you should not, right? Some things matter more than other things. That's all you got to keep in mind. For things that don't matter as much, it's not, yes, certain things can help. The more you do, the better, I guess. But it's also like the more you do, it's not necessarily the better. If those extra couple of things that you're doing that might seem like really small things now, they'll add up in your time and eat away at you, and then you're gonna go ahead and it'll be like downhill from there. And then the concept of you got to be well in order to perform well, you're not going to be that well, and then your performance will decrease, and you're going to be like, what happened? Why is my performance decreasing? Long story short, it's okay if you take a step back from a couple of things. What's most important is you're all in on a few really important things as opposed to being half in on multiple things. I know these aren't new concepts. I know these are in all these different YouTube videos. There's books, stuff like that. I totally get that. Um, and I know this is actually probably very similar to the Pareto principle. I might be wrong if that's not the name, then don't quote me on it. But it's like the 80-20 principle. It's like 80% of the benefits can be reaped from 20% of the work. So that's kind of what I'm referring to. Know what the right 20% is that you can get 80% of the benefits from, so that you can spare your time, spare yourself, because you're human after all. Your job is not to just be a machine. There's a difference between robots and us. That's just kind of like a reality check that I guess I kind of came to after a while of like doing stuff, saying yes to all these different things, and then realizing that half of them were probably not as important as I thought they were, and it was probably a lot more important for me to focus on a few important things as opposed to a lot of few important things and also a lot of unimportant things. Um, but all right, so that's basically all I had to share with you guys. Um, as always, if you guys have any questions, you guys want to reach out, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram or email me. I'm open to chatting with any of you guys, of course, whenever I have time. That's totally fine with me. And yeah, I wish you guys all the best of luck. I know this current medical school application cycle is kind of wrapping up. Um, I wish everyone who applied this cycle the best of luck, and everyone who's preparing to either take the MCAT or apply for this upcoming cycle. Once again, I wish you guys the best of luck. Um, all hard work kind of pays off in the end. When that end is, no one really knows. But you got to trust that it's going to pay off at some point. But until next time, take care, guys, and I'll see you. Take care.